Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new developments in the mass shootings in Texas and Ohio, plus reaction from the White House. President Trump is calling for tougher penalties on hate crimes, why police believe anti-immigrant sentiment may have been a factor in one of the attacks. And Democrats running for president are here in San Diego, what they're saying about the deadly shootings.
Now, the old guard of California Republicans, I believe they've just given up. They haven't shown that they are willing or able to lead the fight to take back our state.
Congressman Duncan Hunter has a challenger, why Carl DeMaio says he's a better choice for Republicans to hold the 50th district. And after a deadly bluff collapse, what is the risk of it happening again along our coast? KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Monday, August 5th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priya Sridhar. America is once again dealing with the impact of gun violence and how to prevent it. The number of dead from the latest incidents increased to 31 after a pair of mass shootings over the weekend. 22 people died as a result of a shooting at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. Hours later, 9 people died in a shooting outside of a bar in Dayton, Ohio. Dozens were injured. Police in Texas say they're working to confirm if the accused shooter posted an online message listing immigration as a motive for the attack. And the issue of gun violence is front and center in San Diego today. Several top Democrats running for president were in town attending a conference hosted by the nation's largest Hispanic civil rights organization. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has some of their reaction to the shootings.
5 Democratic presidential candidates for president spoke at the Unidos U.S. conference today at the Convention Center downtown. Unidos U.S. says President Trump has created a climate of hate and fear toward Latinos, which drove a gunman to kill people in El Paso. They say they're looking for a candidate who will change that narrative.
It's long past time that we, in fact, call out for what it is. This is white nationalism. This is white supremacy. This is about hate. This is about what happened in the border community.
And today I say to Donald Trump, stop your anti-immigrant rhetoric. Stop the hatred.
And no, Mr. President, as he said after Charlottesville, there are not two sides to an issue when the other side is the Ku Klux Klan and white nationalists. There is only one side, and that side is what unites us. That side is the United States of America.
This is a country that was founded and built by immigrants. Unless you are Native American or your ancestors were kidnapped and brought over on a slave ship, your people are immigrants.
Donald Trump has made hate and bigotry and division a political strategy. The attack 2 days ago was an attack on the Latino community. It was an attack on immigrants. It was an attack on Mexicans and Mexican Americans. And that is no accident. That is due in part to the climate that this president has set.
Unidos U.S. says its recent polling found that Latino voters are worried about Trump's rhetoric towards immigrants. And if he's reelected, it could get worse. At the Convention Center, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Senator Bernie Sanders will appear at another event this evening. He's holding a town hall with immigrant workers in Vista. Earlier today, Senator Sanders spoke one-on-one with KPBS reporter Andrew Bowen. He talked about some of the key issues in his campaign. We'll bring you that interview a bit later in this newscast. Mexico's government is calling the El Paso shooting an act of terrorism against Mexicans. Mexico's president said today that he hopes the shooting will lead to a change in U.S. gun laws. There was also a small demonstration outside the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. 8 Mexican citizens were killed in the shooting. CNN reporter Rosa Flores tells us more about the victims.
The earth shall soon Residents filling vigils and memorials in El Paso, Texas, honoring the 20 lives tragically cut short during this weekend's massacre.
In El Paso, we are one big family. We know that the country is mourning with us.
The attack injuring at least 26 others. An elevated sense of fear for many residents here.
We are being isolated for our color.
Survivors struggling to comprehend why they made it out alive when many did not.
Everything that happened was just terrible, but we are blessed. We are blessed because we're alive. And I pray for all those people that died, because it was so many.
Two of those murdered, Andre and Jordan Anchondo. They were inside the Walmart with their 2-month-old son when the shooting began.
She's just a wonderful person. She'd give anything for those kids. Anything, even her life.
That's when Jordan apparently did that day, protecting her baby by using her body as a shield. The baby was injured but survived.
I want to just find my mom. Somebody needs to tell me where she is. I want to know if she's dead or alive.
This emotional plea from a daughter ending in heartbreak. 86-year-old Angie Engelsby's family now says she's one of the victims. And 60-year-old Arturo Benavides, an Army veteran and bus driver, his niece describing him as a caring and strong-willed man with plenty of love left to share.
I don't know.
Police and federal authorities still piecing together why the 21-year-old suspect allegedly went on a rampage.
We are treating it as a domestic terrorism case.
Local police saying the suspect is cooperating with investigators and that he is unrepentant. Law enforcement sources also tell CNN the suspect posted a 4-page manifesto online filled with white nationalist and racist language, targeting immigrants and Hispanics.
We have a manifesto from this individual that indicates to some degree it has a nexus to potential hate crime.
State officials seeking the ultimate punishment.
We will seek the death penalty.
The mayor of El Paso says President Trump will visit the city on Wednesday. Today, the president made his feelings quite clear on the mass shootings. Camila Bernal reports.
We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil.
President Trump speaking out in the wake of the weekend's 2 deadly mass shootings, condemning racism and white supremacy.
These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America.
As the FBI investigates the El Paso shooting as domestic terrorism and as a possible hate crime, the president proposed capital punishment for perpetrators.
Today, I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty.
Today, the death toll in El Paso rose again.
Unfortunately, these wounds have been devastating and major, and we are deeply saddened to be here today to have to tell you that 2 patients have passed.
Meanwhile, as the memorial outside the Walmart in El Paso grows, residents come together to mourn and fight back.
They will not make us fearful. We know that we can only conquer hatred by love and by unity.
Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
Later in the newscast, we'll have a story from KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero on how guns from the U.S. is fueling violence in Mexico. You can also find more coverage of this weekend's shootings online at kpbs.org. Local safety officials are using the deadly cliff collapse in Encinitas as a reminder to beachgoers of the dangers of erosion. KPBS environmental reporter Eric Anderson talked with experts about the concern this could happen again.
The bluff doesn't look dangerous, but the yellow police tape tells a different story. Encinitas lifeguard captain Larry Giles points out where the collapse took 3 lives.
The rocks that you see that are somewhat buried down in this location was the original failure site.
Giles says there are still cracks in the seaside wall and more rock could tumble onto the beach below. That's why the police tape is up. He says the collapse was a shock. Even the lifeguards constantly warn beachgoers about the danger.
It's a very low frequency type incident for us here. It's very significant threshold incident that it's difficult.
The community has left flowers and notes for the 3 women who died. Some of the memorial bouquets are at the top of the stairs that lead to the beach, others in buckets hung near the bluff. While this event is rare, it's not unusual. Scripps Institution of Oceanography researcher Adam Young points to the cliffs near Scripps Pier.
You know, all of the debris here, you see these rocks at the bottom of the cliff. These are all former landslides.
The region's coastal cliffs have been eroding for thousands of years, and Young says it's part of a natural process.
We have waves impacting the bottom of the cliffs, and then we also have rainfall and groundwater and weathering processes that can act on the cliff face and inside the cliff.
Lifeguards are making sure that people who come to the beach to walk or surf are warned of the danger, even in spots that are not considered especially risky. And finding those spots isn't always easy. One thing that you can see right away, the beach here pretty narrow at times during the day. That makes it hard to keep a safe distance from the bluffs. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And it's going to be a bit cooler this week near the coast. Erin Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
We are seeing a beautiful weather pattern. We have our low clouds in the morning, breaking up for sunshine by the afternoon. Satellite and radar, well, it's quiet across San Diego County. Really, the big picture, it's quiet. Now, we do expect to have a trough come rolling through this week. That means a big dip in the jet stream, and that's going to continue our onshore flow throughout the week. So you should expect to see those clouds around when you wake up with that sunshine in the afternoon. 67 degrees tonight for our low in the metro. A couple of clouds lingering. Across the region, we'll see a temperature of 60 in Ramona, El Cajon at 67 degrees, and Mount Laguna 65, mostly clear. Once you get away from the ocean, things are a lot clearer around. On Tuesday, it's still going to be cool and a bit cloudy along the coast in the morning. As soon as you get into those interior areas, though, it's getting pretty warm. Some of those deserts are going to see some warm conditions throughout this week with lots of sunshine. Ramona at 92 for the high, Oceanside at 77 in San Diego, 75 degrees for tomorrow. And in Borrego Springs, we're up to 110. So make sure you are taking breaks to cool down, drink lots of water, check on the elderly neighbors and the kiddos. Now, this is what it looks like by midweek. Notice the big dip in the jet stream I was talking about, the trough moving on in. It's not really going to do much for us except for bring us those clouds right along the coast. So this week, we'll have lots of sunshine each day. Our temperatures will be in the upper 70s. By Saturday, we're talking the low 80s, so getting a little bit warmer. Inland, we'll see sunshine with a few clouds. It's going to be pleasant. Temperatures will be in those mid to upper 80s all week long. And in the desert, well, it's warm, but the good news is Tuesday will be the hottest day of the week, getting a couple of degrees cooler each day. By Saturday, we're talking 104. There is a chance of seeing a pop-up storm, but that's pretty far away. We'll keep our eye on that. And in the mountains, we're in the 80s, very comfortable, 79 on Thursday. Again, a chance of a storm on Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
4 California voters have filed a lawsuit to block a new state law aimed at forcing Donald Trump to release his income tax returns. The law requires presidential candidates to file 5 years' worth of income tax returns. Candidates who refuse will not appear on the March primary ballot. The plaintiffs are 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and an independent. They claim the new law goes too far and exceeds the U.S. Constitution. Radio host and former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio announced he's running for office again, this time to challenge fellow Republican Duncan Hunter for the 50th Congressional District seat. Reform California Chairman Carl DeMaio announced he's running for Congress in 2020 in the 50th District, the only seat in San Diego County held by a Republican.
Stand with me and fight. Fight to take back the state of California from one-party control that has been pursuing a socialist agenda that has undercut our quality of life. That's why today I'm announcing my campaign for U.S. Congress, because I'm sick and tired of seeing California slide further and further into a dumpster.
Representative Duncan Hunter was reelected to the seat back in November, but is currently being prosecuted in federal court for allegedly misusing more than $200,000 in campaign money to fund a lavish personal lifestyle. DeMaio is joining the field in the deep red district with as many as 4 other Republican candidates.
The old guard of California Republicans, I believe they've just given up. They haven't shown that they are willing or able to lead the fight to take back our state. Or worse, like the incumbent in the 50th district, they're tied up in court facing criminal charges.
Hunter's Democratic opponent from the 2018 election, Amar Campanajjar, has also announced he will be running in 2020. DeMaio says he wants to tackle crime and illegal immigration and focus on upholding the Second Amendment. Gun violence was top of mind today as presidential candidates appeared at the Unidos U.S. conference here in San Diego. Senator Bernie Sanders spoke one-on-one with KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen about some of the other issues facing voters.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
So you were here in San Diego for the Unidos U.S. conference. What's your message to Latinos in this campaign?
My message is that we have got to stand together and stop Trump's effort to divide us up based on where we were born or the language that we speak or the color of our skin. This is the United States of America, and the function of a president is bring people together, not foster hatred and prejudice and bigotry.
We heard just this morning from Unidos U.S. about polling results that they've done, and they found that a strong majority of Latinos, 74%, want a presidential candidate who is willing to work with both parties and compromise to get things done. Now, your Medicare for All bill has far from enough support in Congress to actually get passed. How would you negotiate with Congress if you're elected president, and are you willing to compromise on health care to get something done?
No, you're looking at somebody who, when he was in the House, actually got more amendments passed working with Republicans than any other person. You're looking at somebody who just recently, for the first time in 45 years, passed a resolution to get the United States out of the war in Yemen, working with Republicans using the War Powers Act. Passed a major veterans bill working with John McCain. So of course I have a record of working with Republicans. But I think in terms of health care, you will be very surprised to find that not only Democrats and independents support a Medicare for All single-payer program, but so do many Republicans. And the reason for that is they understand that the current system in which 87 million people are uninsured or underinsured, 500,000 people go bankrupt every year because they can't pay medical bills, and 30,000 people die because they don't get to a doctor on time. This is not a system that we have got to continue. We need to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, not a privilege. Function of health care, quality care for all, not making $100 billion in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies.
One of the hottest political issues here locally in San Diego and also in the state of California is homelessness and housing affordability. Some of your opponents in this race have put forward platforms and policy ideas about how to address that. What would you do as president?
Well, you're right. It is a terrible, terrible problem. And it's not only the fact that we have some 500,000 homeless people in America today, but you have millions of people who are spending 45, 50, 60% of their limited incomes on housing. I am very proud that when I was mayor of Burlington, we initiated a community land trust concept, which is now spread not only all over America, but all over the world. Along with Representative Barbara Lee of Oakland, we passed the National Low-Income Housing Trust Fund, first major piece of legislation passed to provide low-income rental units. We have a major crisis, and as President of the United States, I will work with communities all over this country and invest the billions of dollars that we need to build the millions of units that this country absolutely requires. We should not be having people sleep out on the street. We should not be having people spend 50% of their limited incomes on housing. We need to build housing. We need to combat gentrification, which is destroying working class communities. We need to make sure that we have a policy that works for all people, not just real estate developers.
What's the most important lesson that you learned from your 2016 campaign, and what's different this time around?
I'll tell you what the most important lesson is that when you speak truth to the American people, coming forward with ideas that at the time seemed very unpopular, it is amazing how quickly you change the conversation. 4 years ago when I was in California and I said you got to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, I was told that I was crazy and too radical. California has since passed a $15 an hour minimum wage, as has 6 other states, as has the United States Congress. When I talked about making public colleges and universities tuition-free, oh, Bernie, radical idea, can't be done. Well, that's what they've done in Los Angeles, San Francisco, in many parts of New York State, Tennessee, and other parts of the world. When I talked about climate change being the major national security crisis that we face, people literally laughed at me. They're not laughing now. So I think the lesson that I learned is if you have the guts to tell the truth and to take on very powerful special interest, the American people will respond and other politicians will follow your lead. That's my lesson.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, following 2 devastating mass shootings, we devote our program to guns and hate in America and what could be done to change it. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The shooting in El Paso renews the conversation on gun violence in the U.S., but it's also a problem in Mexico, where many of the guns are American-made. Earlier this year, KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero looked at the problem and what's being done about it.
Matt Clear runs an active shooter defense school in San Diego. He was in the military for 12 years and worked 8 years as a police officer.
Guns in Mexico are just like drugs in America, okay? They're freely flowing across that border. That's completely unprotected, you know, and I don't want to get on the wall subject, but basically we need something.
Clear says he doesn't think making U.S. gun laws more restrictive is a solution to stopping the smuggling of guns into Mexico. He says that only creates problems for law-abiding gun owners like him.
So the laws are so convoluted and ever-evolving that I can just be sitting at home doing nothing, and if I'm not going down to my gun store every day asking if there's a new law, I can immediately become a felon.
It's against Mexican law to take U.S. guns into Mexico. But Tijuana's police department says nearly all of the 2,000 weapons it has seized in crime scenes over the last 3 years are from the U.S. They pour in through ports of entry, where there are few inspections. The reality is affecting real people.
And here he is.
Julieta Sanchez shows me a picture of her 29-year-old son, Fernando, who was fatally shot in Tijuana.
They shot him one time in the temple. They shot him right here. You can see in the photo. And then he died.
Sanchez is a U.S. permanent resident in San Diego. She says the problem with her son started when he began to struggle with drug addiction in the U.S.
I wanted to rehabilitate him, but it's too expensive to do it here.
He was killed in Tijuana after she sent him there to be treated. David Shirk is a researcher with the Justice in Mexico Project, who says lax U.S. gun laws are contributing to Mexico's violence hitting an all-time high last year.
Mexico has a homicide by firearm epidemic, and one way to help address that epidemic is to address the problem of firearms.
He says American gun lobbyists have blocked legislation to fix the problem because they profit off the black market in Mexico.
Well, one thing that could be really helpful, which we do not do in the United States, is to register firearms and to track firearms. It's actually illegal in the United States for the ATF to maintain records of who has a gun in the United States.
Shirk also says the southbound smuggling of U.S. guns is contributing to the current border crisis.
Many of those firearms that are contributing to the fear and insecurity that leads people to flee their homes from Central America and come to the U.S. border seeking asylum are U.S. Purchased or manufactured firearms that are making their way into the black market downstream throughout the Americas.
But gun shop owners like Lee Moisev of Gunfighter Tactical says gun law restrictions just hurt his business without doing much else. He says gun shops do plenty to keep weapons out of the hands of criminals. He remembers a man who stopped by once.
He said out loud, I want to buy that rifle to take back to my ranch in Mexico. And we said, no, you can't do that. You cannot do that. There's laws against that, and I'm not going to sell you a gun now.
Some people think Mexico would be safer if its government made it easier for citizens to buy guns, like in the U.S. Currently, Mexican gun laws are extremely restrictive. Bob Maupin is a self-described vigilante in East County. He says Mexico's problems of violence stem from its restrictive gun laws.
I would like to see the Mexican people be armed so they could take their government back, take their country back.
The head of Mexico's customs agency, Ricardo Peralta, says the new administration is installing X-rays and other surveillance technologies at the ports to capture more information about vehicles coming in from the U.S. Previously, there were very few inspections of southbound vehicles.
If in the past they had used technology like we're using now and which we're planning to expand, we would have avoided so many deaths in Mexico.
He says many people have pushed back against southbound inspections because it means slowdowns to enter Mexico, like the long wait times experienced to enter the U.S.
Of course there's resistance. People think Mexico has no intention to take care of its border.
Clear of the active shooter training school says he has another solution.
I'll tell you right now, here's the answer. Hey, America, stop doing illegal drugs. That's it. That's your answer. Every drug addict out there, quit. Stop buying illegal drugs.
And he says that will stop the violence in Mexico. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
That's part of a series of reports by Jean Guerrero. You can find it and tonight's other stories on kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.